Hey everybody, it is Monday, July the 17th. I am still pre-recording my read 20 minutes a day because I thought the first day back from vacation I might not be in the mood to read to you guys. I would be tired. So it is early chapter books today. We are going to continue with the story of the Show and Tell War and other stories about Adam Joshua. Oh, let me set my timer so I know how long to read to you. The sick day. Right in the middle of reading one morning, Adam Joshua started to think about George. George, he thought, was probably missing him very much right now. George, he thought, was probably hiding so that Amanda Jane wouldn't try to eat him, and hiding so Adam Joshua's mother wouldn't make him go outside to play, and feeling like nobody in the world loved him at all. I know that dog, thought Adam Joshua, and he drew a picture of George in the corner of his reading paper with his paws up over his nose and his ears down over his eyes and dog tears running down his chin. In the middle of writing, Adam Joshua decided that maybe he wasn't being fair about Amanda Jane. If she was trying to eat George, it was probably because she was feeling lonely too. Adam Joshua had only been in school a few weeks. Amanda Jane was used to having him around. She wouldn't know what to do without him. Adam Joshua drew a picture of Amanda Jane in the corner of his writing paper. She was looking out from behind the bars of her crib, sad and blue. By science time, Adam Joshua was wondering what went on at home all day when he wasn't there to see it. He was pretty sure Amanda Jane and George were sitting around missing him, but he was beginning to wonder if they might be having a lot of fun without him there instead. George, in fact, might be having so much fun with Amanda Jane that he would decide to become her dog. On his science worksheet, he drew a picture of Amanda Jane and George walking off together, leaving Adam Joshua standing alone. It took up half the page. Adam Joshua, said Miss D, handing back papers after recess, your pictures are very nice, but they don't belong on your worksheets. She looked at him closely. Aren't you feeling well? Adam Joshua had been thinking that he wasn't feeling well at all. I think I'm sick, he told Miss D. I think I'd better go home now. Miss D put her hand on Joshua's head and felt it. No temperature, she said. She had him stick out his tongue. Not green. Adam Joshua looked her straight in both eyes. Green has nothing to do with it, he said. Adam Joshua went home right after lunch. His mother put her hand on his head, had him stick out his tongue, and sighed at him the same way Miss D did. Okay, Adam Joshua, she said, into bed with you and we'll see what develops. Adam Joshua wasn't exactly sure what she had in mind, but he thought he'd better work on it. If you'd like, he told his mother, you can send George in here. Amanda Jane too, he said. I wouldn't mind at all. Adam Joshua, his mother said, tucking him in tight. Absolutely not. You're home from school sick, and you're in bed sick, and babies and dogs shouldn't be around sick people. Adam Joshua meant to say something to that, but his mother had left the room and closed the door on him before he had the chance. He lay in the bedroom by himself and worked on getting sicker. He tried coughing, he tried sneezing. He held his stomach for a while to see if it wanted to hurt. Superman kept watching him from his poster on the wall, but Adam Joshua pretended not to notice. He could hear giggling coming up the stairs from the living room. He crawled out of bed and crept down the stairs to see what was going on. He couldn't believe it. Amanda Jane was sitting in the middle of the floor with George's ears in her mouth, and George was just lying there smiling and letting her eat him. Every so often, George would lick Amanda Jane's stomach where her shirt rode up, and every time he did that, Amanda Jane would burst out laughing. Hey! yelled Adam Joshua, scaring them both. You can't do that, he shouted, taking George's ears out of Amanda Jane's mouth and wiping her stomach off and pulling her shirt down. Even if I'm at school, this is my dog, Adam Joshua hollered, picking up George. Even if I'm sick, it's my dog, he yelled. Adam Joshua, his mother said from behind him, give that dog back to that baby and get yourself back to bed. George is my dog, Adam Joshua told his mother, and she's not allowed to have him. Nonsense, his mother said. George is the family dog, and Amanda Jane can play with him as much as she'd like. But, Adam Joshua howled, holding tight to George. No buts, said his mother, and before he knew it, Adam Joshua was back in bed with the door closed without George, and he could hear giggling coming up the stairs again. Adam Joshua crawled out of bed and went to the door of his room. He inched it open and whistled. No George. He kept his feet in his room, but he moved his head and stomach out to lie on the floor in the hall. Here, George, he whispered. George didn't come. Adam Joshua inched farther out into the hall, but he kept his toes in the bedroom to play fair. George! He whispered louder. He heard Amanda Jane laughing. "George!" Adam Joshua yelled. Adam Joshua's mother picked him up by the neck of his pajamas with one hand and by the seat of his pajamas with the other. "Scoot," she said, standing there while he scooted and waiting until he closed the door behind him. "And you're to stay there," he heard his mother say on the other side of the door. Adam Joshua stayed there. He inched the door open, and he sat and listened to Amanda Jane giggling, and to Amanda Jane chuckling, and to Amanda Jane laughing out loud. And then it got quiet. Too quiet. Suddenly, the door of the room pushed open, and Amanda Jane crawled across his floor as fast as she could and got one of his space spies. Adam Joshua couldn't believe his eyes. He'd always worried that Amanda Jane came into his room while he was away at school and got into his things. He'd always told his mother to be sure to keep his door closed and not let her into his room. He always told Amanda Jane to keep out, and he'd always told George to keep an eye on her and make sure she did. Now Adam Joshua saw that George was keeping an eye on Amanda Jane just like he'd told him. George trotted into the room right behind her and picked up a space spy in his mouth too. Amanda Jane and George turned around and saw Adam Joshua. George dropped the figure out of his mouth and lay down on the floor and whined. Amanda Jane took one look at Adam Joshua and clamped her teeth down harder on the space spy and tried to crawl out the door faster than she came in. Adam Joshua took a flying leap out of bed and tackled her. Amanda Jane hit her chin on the floor, and Adam Joshua hit his head on the door, and George crawled under the bed, and Adam Joshua found himself staring at his mother's knees. "Feeling better?" his mother asked. She picked up Amanda Jane and checked her chin and stopped her crying. Then she glared down at Adam Joshua. "They're not supposed to come in my room by themselves," Adam Joshua yelled, crawling back into bed fast before his mother got around to picking him up by the seat of his pajamas again. "Never!" he shouted as she left carrying Amanda Jane. "Ever!" he hollered as George crawled out from under his bed and went sliding through the door without once looking back. Adam Joshua wiped the space spies off on his pajama top and moved all of them to the top of his dresser. He put the stuffed rabbit that had been sitting there down where the space spies had been. He thought about it a minute and put it in the closet instead. He didn't think Amanda Jane could crawl with a stuffed rabbit in her mouth, but you never could be sure about Amanda Jane. He got back in bed and lay down. He was feeling sicker by the minute. "Adam Joshua," said his mother coming through the door, "Nelson came by to see you." Adam Joshua sat up and straightened out the covers to get ready for Nelson. "I sent him home," his mother said, "because you might be contagious." Adam Joshua lay down again. "Nelson brought your books," and his mother, laying a pile of books down on the bed. "Nelson brought your books," said his mother, laying a pile of books down on the bed, "and all the schoolwork they did after you left today. Miss D sent all the assignments for tomorrow, too, in case you're still sick." "I thought that was very nice of Nelson," said Amanda Jane's mother, handing him a pencil. "Now you can catch up, and that will make you feel better." "Don't worry," she said. "I'll keep George out so you won't be bothered." And she went out the door, closing it behind her. Adam Joshua looked out the window and saw Nelson's window shade go down. Nelson's hand go up in front of it to start writing. Adam Joshua got out his binoculars. It says, "Adam Joshua, are you okay? I'm worried about you." "Adam Joshua," the hand wrote, "are you okay? I'm worried about you." Adam Joshua got his markers, pulled down his shade, and crawled up under it. He drew a picture of himself with his tongue hanging out. He colored his face green and his feet yellow and drew red spots and blue dots all over his body. "Getting worse," he wrote. Miss D made Gabby sit alone in the corner so she could get her work done. Nelson drew a picture of Gabby quiet in a corner. Adam Joshua was sorry to have missed that. "Angie's new hamster died," Nelson wrote. Adam Joshua wasn't surprised. He waited while Nelson wiped his shade clean. "Elliot Banks got in trouble today," wrote Nelson. "Miss D even yelled at him." Adam Joshua couldn't believe he had missed Elliot Banks getting in trouble with Miss D and hearing Miss D yell at him. "And," finished Nelson, "we had a birthday party." Adam Joshua hadn't known there was going to be a birthday party. He had to wait to find out whose birthday it was while Nelson wiped his shade again. "Hannah's," wrote Nelson. "We had chocolate cupcakes." Adam Joshua loved chocolate. He went back over to look through his books because he thought if Nelson brought those, he might have brought a cupcake too. He couldn't find one. He crawled up under his shade and looked out. Nelson was gone, but a new note said, "Your mother said you were too sick for chocolate. She said I could eat it." Nelson had written, "So I am." "Adam Joshua," his mother called the next morning, "it's time to get up and get ready for school." Adam Joshua had already decided that he wasn't going anywhere. "Adam Joshua," his mother said, stopping by his room, "you seem fine. I really think you need to go back today." Adam Joshua coughed. He'd decided on the cough, and he'd been practicing. It sounded awful. "Young man," his mother said, sighing and feeling his forehead with her hand, "this is it. By noon it's either school or the doctor. You can't plan to stay home forever." That's just what Adam Joshua had been planning. He thought he was maybe going to have to stay home from school forever. There was no telling when he could trust Amanda Jane and George so that he could leave again. He hoped he wouldn't have to be sick and keep coughing and stay in bed forever too, but he supposed if he had to, he would. He watched out his window, Nelson getting dressed and getting ready for school. Nelson came over and pulled down his shade and started writing. "I'd be sick with you, but I'd miss the field trip. If you're sick tomorrow, I'll stay home then." The hand under the shade waved goodbye. Adam had forgotten all about the field trip. The whole class was going to the planetarium to look at stars. Adam Joshua loved stars. He sighed. Altogether, it seemed to him it was going to be a long day. He played a game by himself, and he sang a song to himself, and he told himself a joke. He'd already heard it. He read a book, and finally he got bored enough to start on his schoolwork. All the schoolwork was the same kind of schoolwork he usually worked on all day in school, but at school everyone else was working on it at the same time, and Ms. D was always around to help. Now Adam Joshua was going to have to do it all by himself, and he wasn't sure his mother knew about any of this stuff in case he got stuck. He started on his math. He was on his second row of problems when he started thinking about everybody at school doing math. He wondered if Nelson was having trouble and needed him there, and if he was getting worried about sixes. He drew a picture in the corner of his math paper of Nelson looking scared with sixes all around him. Adam Joshua could hear things happening downstairs. He went into the hall and listened. They were already playing together. He could hear George looking and Amanda Jane laughing. Adam Joshua slipped down the stairs and pounced on George and pulled his ears down over his eyes and dog-napped him before George or Amanda Jane could say anything about it. He took George upstairs and put him in the corner with his blanket Fred. "I've got to work," he told George, "so you'll have to play by yourself, but you'll feel better," he said, "knowing I'm here." Adam Joshua worked on his last row of math. George went along the edge of the bed trying to find a place to climb up. Adam Joshua kept his leg and foot moving to keep George down. "Go play in your corner," Adam Joshua said, "and when I'm through working, I'll come play with you." George didn't listen. He backed up and took a giant leap and flew over Adam Joshua's leg and landed in the middle of the paper. "George!" howled Adam Joshua. He took George and put him in the corner, and he took a desk chair and put it on one side of George. He dragged the rocking chair out of Amanda's room to put on the other side of George. Then he stuffed clothes and toys under the chairs and on top of the chairs and all around the chairs to make a high fence so that George couldn't get out. "Now you'll be fine and feel safer," he said. "You just play and call me if you need me." Adam Joshua went back to work. He was about through copying his math paper over when George started whining. He wasn't much further along when George started howling. Okay, Adam Joshua sighed, picking up all his work and moving it off the bed and over onto the floor beside the chairs. He lay on his stomach and worked his feet through the clothes and toys until they were inside where George was. George settled down to biting and licking Adam Joshua's toes, and Adam Joshua settled back to work. "Just so you're happy," he muttered to George. George pounced on Adam Joshua's toes and growled at them and bit on them until he fell asleep. Things in the room got quiet. Adam Joshua started on his science. They were studying planets and stars. Adam Joshua was one of the best people in the class when it came to knowing about stars. Miss D called on him to answer questions about stars all the time. He couldn't believe she'd take everybody to the planetarium to look at stars without him. He drew stars around the edges of his paper, and he drew the school bus with Miss D and everybody in it. Everybody looked terrible because Adam Joshua wasn't along to tell them about things, and Miss D looked like she was going to cry. Just then Adam Joshua heard Amanda Jane crying. He ignored her for a while, but it began to sound like she was sobbing. Adam Joshua couldn't figure out where his mother was because she ought to be doing something to help. He had never heard Amanda Jane cry like that before. He pulled his feet carefully out from underneath George and went downstairs. Amanda Jane was lying in the middle of her toys, howling as though her heart would break. Adam Joshua lay down beside her and patted her back. Amanda Jane didn't care. She kept right on howling. "Adam Joshua," his mother said, kneeling beside them, "where on earth is George?" She picked up Amanda Jane and bounced her to see if that would help. Amanda Jane and George play together at this time of the day. She loves him, and she's used to him, and she needs him. She's lonely, said his mother. Adam Joshua felt terrible. He hadn't known Amanda Jane felt like that about George. Adam Joshua, his mother said, sitting down in a rocking chair to rock Amanda Jane, George is full of love. He can love Amanda Jane during the day and you at night, and still have lots of love and energy left over. He can be a dog that belongs to both of you, she said, and it will never matter one bit. Adam Joshua wasn't sure about that, but it didn't seem to him he had any choice. Amanda Jane was still howling when Adam Joshua carried her upstairs to her crib. She kept right on howling until Adam Joshua brought George up and put him in the crib with her. Then Amanda Jane cheered up right away. She put her head on George's side and his ear in her mouth and fell asleep making chuckly little baby noises. Adam Joshua watched them for a minute. It made him feel terrible, but not as bad as he thought it might. The bus was leaving for the planetarium right after lunch. Adam Joshua hurried back to his room and dug under the bed for the clothes he'd worn 2 days ago. He didn't have all his work done for today, but he thought Miss D would be so happy to see him she wouldn't mind. He took 2 of his oldest Space Spies off the top of his dresser, and he dug for some rope in a drawer. He went into the hall and closed the door of his room. He tied one end of the rope around his doorknob and the other end around the leg of a table that stood in the hall. No trespassing, he wrote on a sign, and he put it on the floor. He put it on the floor so it would be low enough for Amanda Jane and George to read. Then he put his Space Spies by the sign so that when Amanda Jane and George woke up and found he'd gone back to school, they wouldn't miss him too much. The next chapter is called The Library Caper. One of the things Adam Joshua liked best about school was the library. One of his favorite days was Library Day. "This is it," Miss D told everybody. "The library's open and Mrs. Jackson's waiting for us." Mrs. Jackson waved at everyone as they came in and sat at her desk ready to check books out. Nelson headed straight for the fish books. Philip headed straight for the books on space. Gabby headed straight for Mrs. Jackson to talk for a bit, and everybody else headed straight for the books they liked most. Adam Joshua looked at mysteries, and he looked at books about dinosaurs, and he looked at books about famous people. "Hurry up, Adam Joshua," Ms. D said. "Everybody's almost ready." Adam Joshua looked at books about things in the past and books about things in the future, and he found a book on how to build a rocket. "Adam Joshua," Ms. D said. "Everyone else is through." Adam Joshua started across the room to check the robot book out, but on his way there, something caught his eye. It was a fat red book stuck down behind a lot of other books, and he wasn't sure because he couldn't see much of it, but what he could see looked like a picture of Superman's foot. "Adam Joshua," Miss D said behind him. "You go on ahead," said Adam Joshua, pulling books off the shelf to get the book behind. "I'll be there in a minute." Adam Joshua worked until he could see Superman's legs, and he took books out until he uncovered the whole book with a picture of Superman flying fast across it. "Why, Adam Joshua," Mrs. Jackson said, "we've been looking for that book a long time. Everybody loves that book," she said, "but one day it disappeared." Everybody crowded around, and Adam Joshua held the book up for them to see. "I don't suppose," said Mrs. Jackson, "that you'd mind being the first to check it out." As far as Adam Joshua was concerned, he didn't mind at all. Adam Joshua read the book about Superman during writing, and he read during science time, and he read during math until Miss D came and took the book away. "I know just how you feel," she whispered, "but you can get your book back after school and take it home to read." "Adam Joshua," said Nelson as they walked home after school, "you can't even see where you're going." He pulled Adam Joshua's sleeve to keep him from walking into a tree. "Superman's just not worth it." "He's worth it," Adam Joshua said, looking up from his book long enough to show Nelson. "He's fighting here, and he's flying here, and he's making things safe for everyone." Nelson looked at the book with Adam Joshua, and they both walked into a fire hydrant. At home, Adam Joshua closed his bedroom door to keep people and babies and dogs out, and he curled up on his bed to read. "Pow!" he whispered, reading about Superman. It was the best book he'd ever had. It told all about Superman being born, and about Superman coming to Earth, and about all the things he had done here since he came. "Come play!" Nelson yelled from the tree outside Adam Joshua's window. "I can't," Adam Joshua yelled back. "I'm reading now." "Superman wouldn't want you to be like this," Nelson shouted. Adam Joshua pulled the window shade down and curled up again on his bed. "Double pow!" he whispered. Adam Joshua took the book about Superman back to school and let Miss D keep it until recess. "Look," he said, showing everybody everything. "Pow!" everybody said, looking at the way Superman did things and then running around trying to do them too. "It's a bird! It's a plane!" Alex yelled, swinging the swing high and jumping out and landing flat on the ground. "Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound," Jonesy yelled, jumping over Alex. "Adam Joshua," said Andy. "I just love that book." Everybody but Nelson nodded. Everybody but Nelson loved it too. We're at a good stopping point, and the timer is going to go off right now. So that was our early chapter book for Monday the 17th, and I will be back to reading live to you on Wednesday with Junior Fiction, and on Thursday we will read the next installment of the Show and Tell War. So I look forward to seeing you live and telling you a little bit about my vacation then. So I'll see you later. Bye.